Well, we got a Facebook post this week that I wanted to address from Shanda. She took her car into a shop. She had a check engine light on, so she complained about a check engine light. Her other complaint was that the car rode rough, specifically at 30 miles an hour. So she took it in. The check engine light was related to a sensor. She ended up replacing it. But she did address some belts the shop pointed out to her. And then as far as the rough ride and I guess you would call it, she said a rough ride at 30 miles an hour. They said not to worry about it, and they didn't see anything there that was of concern. Well, she left. She went home. She's talking to her neighbor. She says, I get the belts fixed. The check engine light's no big deal, but I still get that rough ride. So he took a look at it and saw a cupped or feathered tire. She went down to Discount Tire, and they said, oh, yeah, you definitely have a cupped or feathered tire. I think when I read it, I was thinking more of a separated tire. I don't think a cupped or feathered tire would create much noise at 30 miles an hour. You would feel a separated tire and hear a separated tire at 30 miles an hour. So her point was, well, I'm really upset because I went in there for an oil change and an inspection, and I asked for these things, and they sent me out with a tire that was all cupped.
Well, I think what that is failure to communicate. She went in for one problem, and for whatever reason, the shop didn't pay attention to it. They didn't focus on it. Maybe there was a breakdown of communication at the counter. So we're trying to help, but we really don't know the big picture. And Dave and I have been talking about this morning over breakfast. Did this shop ignore the tires because they don't sell tires, so they don't really care? Or maybe they lose focus. They found the check engine light problem, but she didn't want to have it fixed. But then she ended up with getting belts fixed. So, one thing that I think is important when that shop is calling you to tell you about what they've found with your car, you really need to address, I brought it in for check engine light. So let's talk about that first. Brought in for an oil change. Let's talk about that. And then a specific problem, my tires. We shouldn't be talking about buying belts until we've addressed the tires.
And I want to call it effective complaining, because her question was really, this happened, I'm upset about it. Do I write a review? Do I contact the owner? Should I even bother? And I would say absolutely.
All three.
All three. You do want to call the owner, and you do want to give him the opportunity. He may not know that he has this problem going on in his shop, and it may not be a major problem. It could be systemic, or it could just be simple miscommunication, or somebody overlooked something.
Well, I hate to have complaints, but I love to have complaints.
You would never know if someone didn't complain.
Because, it's important. If we're not providing the type of service that we feel we're providing or that you expect from us, the only way we know that we're doing that or having a mistake is if you complain to it. The worst thing that you can do is just get mad about it and then go write this nasty review online and just vent. I think most people really are just venting when they do that. But really, let's give the shop an opportunity to maybe they didn't make a mistake and maybe it's a perception. And so you really do have to call the owner, call the manager, talk about it.
He may not want to hear it, but if he's a good owner, he does want to hear it.
Oh, yeah. You want to hear it.
Does want to hear it. And, stuff happens in shops and things do go wrong. I would like to think we're perfect. And, I made a mistake once, and that was that I thought I made a mistake.
Yeah, I thought I made one, but I was wrong.
We may not like to hear it. I don't come in offensive. Just come in just calmly, and keep it very respectful. I paid for an inspection or I got an inspection, and one of my main concerns was totally blown off. And you'd be doing your fellow community members a favor by letting this guy know that they could have overlooked a safety item, perhaps.
So first thing is just get a hold of him and talk about it. Make an appointment. This is Rhonda or Sally or Frank or Bob, and I had my car in on Tuesday, and I'd like to come back down and talk to you. Is there a time when we can come where there's not a lot of people around and go out and look and just talk and probably leave the car again? And if it's a good shop, they're going to apologize. They're going to get you a loaner car. They're going to demonstrate, maybe bring it in, re-inspect it, and show you what happened. And if you don't get anywhere there, well, then maybe it's time to write the bad review. But at the same time, if you get satisfaction, then go write that review too and say, hey, I did have a problem, but I spoke with the owner, and he came out, and we worked this thing out, and I misunderstood something, and they kind of missed something. But in the end, we communicated about it, and all was good. And I'm going to give them 4 stars this time.
So I say, Shanna, definitely write a review, but you're just a little shy of all the information to write a complete review. And up first this segment, it looks like we've got Jay in Phoenix he's looking at a 2012 Kia. Go ahead, Jay. You're on Bumper to Bumper Radio.
The car's new. It only has a couple of thousand miles on it. I'm real happy with it. But I noticed when I come to a stoplight. I get a rough vinyl on it. I took it to the dealer, and they checked it out, and they say everything checks out. They said it probably is air conditioning on it, and I just would like to know what your take is on that.
Well, I think that being such a new car, you've got to get some miles on it and drive it. It's got some characteristics that you're probably not used to, depending on what other kind of car you were driving. And that Kia Soul's a pretty small car, 4-cylinder engine more likely. And I would imagine that there's probably nothing wrong with the car. It's more of the case where you're just not used to it.
I would say you're exactly right. Give it some time. Try it out for 2, 3, 5,000 miles, and then take it back into them and see if they're of the same opinion. And the other thing you might do, if you really do think there is a problem, I think you find that service writer and say, hey, let's sit in my Kia right here. Let's test it out, fuel it at idle. Let's turn it off, and let's get in the Kia right next door to it.
Yeah, go pick a brand new one off the lot. And
brand new one off the lot, and let's compare the two. And if the two are about the same, well, that's going to be typical for the brand and the make and the model. But if they're dramatically different, say, now you got to say, we do have an issue, and this is something we want to look at. So that's a great call. Thanks.
Yeah, but again, just get some miles on it, and we'll see.
Let's go to, looks like Billy. On a 1990 Plymouth Voyager. Go ahead, Billy. You're on Bumper to Bumper Radio.
Hello?
Hello, Billy. How you doing this morning?
Oh, man, it couldn't be better. Yourself?
Great. What can we help you with?
Okay, I got that 90 Plymouth Voyager V6 motor, and that fuel line is about a foot long, lapsing on me.
Now, which fuel line? Where are you talking about? Under the hood or in the back?
Yeah. It's under the hood.
Okay.
And there's a 1/4-inch vacuum, I guess, return line beside of it.
Okay.
That's a 5/16 fuel injection line, and every 3 to 6 or 9 months it'll collapse on me.
Well, I in my head I can picture that. There's 2 lines that are coming up off of the wheel well, off the strut tower area, and then they come across the belts. On one side, I believe there's 2 quick release connectors, and then on the other side you just use a standard clamp to connect those. I would suspect if you're having a problem with those 2 hoses, maybe you're not using fuel injection hose and it's softening the hose or stretching it from the pressure. You can't use normal fuel hose that you would get, say, for your carbureted car that only has 3 or 5 pounds of fuel pressure. That Dodge Caravan has 38 or 46 pounds of fuel pressure, and so you really need to make sure you're using proper fuel injection fuel line. So that's the first thing. I'd start to make sure you have that. If you don't, there's where you have to go. Now, if you are already using the fuel injection fuel line, the only thing that's going to make that soft or pliable or mushy is maybe another oil leak on it. Maybe the power steering pump is
that's a good point.
Leaking oil and flinging oil all over the place and maybe making it swell. But I think you're probably using the wrong kind of hose.
Now, he said collapsing.
I know.
It's pressurized, so it actually should be
should be expanding, yeah.
Expanding.
I mean, sometimes you see a radiator hose sucked, down and collapsed, but typically not a fuel hose. So make sure when you're going to the auto parts store, if this is in fact something you're fixing yourself, just be clear that you need fuel injection fuel hose. 2012 Honda Accord. What can we help you with, Steve?
Hi, guys. I recently purchased the vehicle about a month and a half ago. And I noticed a little vibration on the steering wheel around 70 miles per hour, 75 miles per hour. So I took it to the dealership, and they balanced the tires, and it was still same symptoms. So took it back, and I've been back into the dealership 3 times. So they did road force balancing.
Right.
I don't know what that is, but it's still the same. I don't know what to do anymore, and they don't know what to do.
How many miles do you have on this, Steve?
Currently 2170.
21,000 or 2,170?
2,100.
Okay.
That's pretty new. I think if it's significant enough, I'd be asking for some sort of concession. We need to get those. If there's a ride disturbance on something that's got 2,000 miles on it.
Yeah, I mean, they did the right thing by road force balancing the tires. And what that is when there's a tire balancer, and I have one at our shop. Not a whole lot of people have them, but they're out there. In a road force, they're going to spin the wheel and they're going to load that tire with approximately 1,500 pounds of pressure, similar to the way you would if the car was on the road. And it's going to spin it and balance it and check for out of balance there. But it's also checking the whole tire and wheel assembly for out of round. And if it does detect a high spot in the tire and a low spot on the wheel, it will have you break down that tire and spin, and it's called match mounting.
Hey, Steve, have they tried rotating those tires around on the car at all?
They didn't really say anything about that.
Because that would be the first thing I'd be trying, would be to rotate. Let's say if we got a little vibration in the steering wheel, I'd try and put those front tires on the back and the back tires on the front just to see if anything changes, because we want to find out where that bad tire is. Because I don't think you got 4 bad tires. I think there's just 1.
Well, and are these factory wheels, or did this come with some aftermarket add-on wheels that came on the lot?
I think so, yeah. They're standard wheels.
Okay, well, again, you need to go. Maybe it's just having some time and maybe going into the service department and asking them, hey, let's pull some other wheels off of a brand new 2012 car, and let's just get wheels off of another car and try that. That might be one good thing. I don't think you're down the road for the lemon law yet, but they have made 3 attempts to fix this car, and that does qualify. No, I'm not going to say exactly within the lines of a lemon law, but if they can't make this problem go away and they've made attempts to, it might be something you might start looking at down the road, but I think you're still way far from that.
Well, the manufacturer is going to be the manufacturer of the tire is going to be the one that's ultimately responsible if it's not a bad wheel or something like that. But let's say it was a Goodyear tire or XYZ brand. They're going to stand behind it for ride disturbance. And I think they do it for the first percentage of tread. So you don't want to let it go on forever and ever. We want to get this thing taken care of where we can still prove that it's just a bad tire.
Yeah, and one tip, maybe go to a different advisor, but one thing I will say, every time you go to the dealer, to have them address that. Don't just let them hand you the keys and say, here, we tried this, let us know.
Right.
You want to document and memorialize each one of those events.
And take the service advisor for a drive with you so he can feel he knows exactly what you're talking about. In the old days, we went 55 on the freeway. Now we're going 75, 80 miles an hour. Tire balance is a huge deal.
Yeah,
for sure. Well, next up, we've got Lisa, who has been so patiently waiting. She's got a 2004 Toyota Forerunner. Go ahead, Lisa. You're on Bumper to Bumper Radio.
Hi, guys. Thanks. About a week ago, I had a light come on my dash, and I guess it's the SRS warning light. And I'm not really sure exactly what that does, but the odd thing is literally about an hour ago, I left discount, and I had 4 brand-new tires put on. And for like 10 minutes, the light was gone. And then all of a sudden it came back on again. So I didn't know if it was related to the tires. I don't think it is, so I'm not quite sure what that means.
Hey, Lisa, did that light come on all by itself? There wasn't 5 lights that came on with it?
No, all by itself.
Well, the SRS light, secondary restraint system. Mm-hmm. So, and it's a yellow light, correct?
It's red.
Oh, it's red.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Okay. Usually they're yellow.
You sure you passed your transmission test,
Dave? So, typically when the SRS light comes on, there's going to be multiple parts of the restraint system we're going to be looking at. And S for the RS is secondary, so it's mostly to do with the airbags. So there's several sensors in this car. I'm not sure exactly on a Forerunner, but in many cars there might be an occupant detection sensor in the seat, where the airbag or the airbag system wants to know if somebody's sitting there. Because if there's not somebody sitting there and you're in a collision, it's not going to blow the airbag maybe on the passenger side. It also wants to know if you have your seatbelt plugged in. So if your seatbelt is plugged in on the smart airbags or the second generation airbags, it's going to deploy that airbag differently for whether or not you have a seatbelt on or off. So this is something with an airbag or airbag related most likely. Could be as simple as the latch on the buckle, or the switch in the latch on the buckle.
But the fact that the light turned on, there's going to be what we call a diagnostic trouble code stored in the computer, so they know where to start looking. Now, I know on these late model airbag systems, you can throw your laptop in the passenger seat, and it'll turn a light on. I know it does in my car because it knows it's not a proper weight for a person.
It thinks somebody's sitting there without a seatbelt on.
We've got some open lines. Let's go with Mike from Chandler on a 97 Ford Escort. Go ahead, Mike. You're on Bumper to Bumper Radio.
Yes, similar to the earlier guy, I have a stuttering idle, you might say, and if you hit the gas, it goes away. But it's my brother's ASE, and he says in 12 areas compared to what you're talking about 9. But he says that it's searching for a rich, lean mixture. What would be wrong with it?
So it's...
And I also, also going down the road, you can kind of feel it like, sit back a little bit, like it's coasting, then it'll like take off again, but it's no, I'm real sensitive to this kind of stuff, so it's not that big of a, setback, but you can feel it kind of like draw back a little bit.
So is it fair to say you have a little bit of a surge at a cruise speed, and then when you stop at the light, it's a little bit rougher?
Well, it's like what I experienced, taking off in the morning, is you're in traffic and stuff like that, and it'll sit there and kind of like stutter, and it's like, RPM goes down a little bit, like it's searching, and then when you hit the freeway, you can feel it kind of like lessen in power.
Okay. Does this have a check engine light or any warning lights on it on the dash?
No, and I went to AutoStore and had them put their machine on it, and nothing showed up.
Okay. So what we need to do here, this is what we call in our shop no code diagnosis. And on the Ford products, they have what's called Mode 6. Now, you can't get into Mode 6 with your 99-cent scanner at AutoZone. You've got to have a real diagnostic, a Snap-on or the Ford tool or, OTC, whatever, that actually lets you get in and see the data. And when you get into Mode 6 operation, you're going in and looking at everything that's happening in code on the computer, in the language that the computer sees.
Looking for misfire codes, perhaps?
Yeah, but it's not even going to set a code. It's counting... It's
misfire counter, right?
Yeah, behind the scenes, you have to have enough codes or enough counts to then finally turn on the light. So it could be a misfire problem. You could be having overfueling. Kind of says when you were talking about hunting, maybe it had the idle surging up and down. Used to be an oxygen sensor would do that, but on a 97 car, the oxygen sensor doesn't have that much of authority to do that. It typically can't make the idle change that much. It's more of fine tuning. So it's one of those ideas or one of those items. It's going to need to get to a shop where they've got diagnostic tools to get in there and figure it out. And you're probably going to spend $100, $200 figuring that one out, unless there's something obvious.
The fact or fiction for today, and I need some clarity on this, so maybe you can help me out. I should change my fuel filter in my car every 30,000 miles. Is that a fact or fiction? You look confused. That's not a good sign.
You come up with these fact or fictions, and they're never black and white. There's always, you know me, I can just pick it apart. Fact or fiction? Yeah, you should. If you can and you have one, that is a fact. You should change it every 30,000 miles.
But they've gone away from making them serviceable, right? They're no longer on the frame rail. They put them in the gas tank, so I guess you change it when you change the fuel pump out.
Right, and now in your owner's manual, I'll tell you, we had some people with Toyota Forerunners today calling in. Back in the late 80s, 90s, you'd go through the entire service schedule. There's never anywhere where it says you need to change the fuel filter. But guess what? We were pulling them out at 60,000 miles plugged up.
And they were just pouring mud. I remember pouring mud out of fuel filters and going, how's this thing even running? So if you got one, you can service it. It's not a bad idea. But fewer and far between are vehicles you can actually service the fuel filter.
A lot of late models, they're in the fuel tank. And then on the diesel trucks and stuff, we usually change those every 15,000 miles. So, very sensitive. You don't want to get dirt in there. So
I'm glad you had an answer. Well, up first this segment, we've got Chris from Mesa on a 2004 Nissan Frontier. Go ahead, Chris. You're on Bumper to Bumper Radio.
Hey, guys. Thanks for taking my call. I got an '04 Frontier. It's a manual transmission, and just had a timing belt replaced probably a couple months back. And when I'm on the highway going, 70, 80 miles an hour, like you're driving into town, up to Flagstaff or whatnot, I'll hear a small, almost like a screech that's maybe a fraction of a second long, and I almost feel a loss of power. And I'm on cruise control while I'm driving, and it's pretty consistent. It's every 18 seconds, 20 seconds you hear this, and then almost like a loss of power when that happens. And I'm just wondering what is that possibly?
I think I know.
Okay.
You're running the air conditioner?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Possibly what's happening. Now, let me ask you this. When you hear the little dip, is that then followed by the loss of power?
Yes, it is.
Yeah, it's compressor cycling.
I think you've got what's happening is it may be, well, it is normal for the air conditioning clutch to cycle. It's going to cycle on and off. It's got a low pressure switch, or when it knows the temperature inside the cab is where it wants to be, it's going to go ahead and just shut off the air conditioning clutch underneath the hood. There's a magnetic, electronically controlled clutch. Now, if your air conditioning system is low, it might cycle on, off very frequently. So maybe one thing to do, if you want to just narrow that down, you could maybe crack the windows a little bit to where the temperature inside the car is not going to get cool enough to the point where the air conditioner is going to cut off. Try running it like that. Windows cracked, AC on, and see if it stops cycling.
And I would say also to prove that it is AC cycling, you just turn the AC off and see if every 18 seconds you're not feeling that screech and that lack of power.
And I would suspect that you're probably slightly low on charge, on your air conditioning charge, if it is cycling that fast. So if you can isolate it to the air conditioner, then just go to the shop, tell them what's happening. You don't want to steer or lead them, but you could tell them you think it's tied. There's a correlation to the AC turning on and off, and maybe start with an air conditioning service. Make sure it's got the proper charge level.
Thanks so much for the call, Chris. Let's go with Dan on a 2004 Expedition from Phoenix. Go ahead, Dan. You're on Bumper to Bumper Radio.
How you doing? The question I have an 04 Expedition, and my father recently changed a fuel pump on it and a fuel filter. And a couple of days ago, I was driving down the road, and it just completely died off on me. The engine turns, and from what my father's saying, there's no fuel going to the throttle. And I have no idea why, and I really don't know what to do.
Well, I don't know if the fuel pump is related. We may just have a situation where maybe we don't have any injector pulse.
Well, yeah, and on that one he says there's no fuel going to the throttle. Well, you're not going to see. This is not a throttle body injected vehicle. This has multi-port fuel injection, so you're not going to see any fuel if you open up the throttle. So a couple things. I mean, we do need to determine, is it spark or fuel? So if you have a fuel pressure gauge or a way to check fuel volume, you need to see if you've got fuel. However you determine that the fuel pump was bad the last time, double check that. On that vehicle, maybe by the driver's side floorboard or in the rear storage compartment, there's going to be an inertia switch. That could have tripped. That's going to interrupt power to the fuel pump, and that's by design. So if you have an accident, it shuts off fuel. But
I reset that. According to the owner's manual, and nothing's happening. I went through all the fuses to see, what could stop it or prevent it from turning on.
Sure.
It's just I have no clue, and this car's stuck and nowhere to go.
Well, it's one of those things. If it's just something that's beyond your skill level, bumpertobumperradio.com. Hopefully, there's a shop there that's in your area. If you don't have a shop that you're already using, you're just going to need to get to somebody that can do the testing and really determine what the problem is. So, Derek, you're up on your 1991 Suburban. What can we help you with today?
Yeah, I got a 4L80E, and I got the Suburban for free. Had 80,000 miles on the transmission, and they never serviced it, so I took the risk of servicing it, putting a new filter on it, putting an external cooler on it, and I took it off up to 4 peaks, shifted great, ran great. I was coming down, I had a hot brake smell, so I pulled over thinking it was the brakes for about half an hour and turned it right back on, and I got that hot brake smell again, and oh man, so I tried to get it to shift in a second gear, and it wouldn't shift in a second gear. I took it out of four-wheel drive, and it was in park or neutral, and it made a grinding sound while trying to take out the transfer case out of four-wheel drive. The only time I could get it to go into second gear was revving it really high, and would just gradually just into second gear, and then that's it. That's all I could get. Well, the other day, I go to move it, and it works great. Take it to emissions, passes, shifts fine. Everything works great. I'm clueless of why it did that.
Now, you were in four-wheel drive on the pavement, or are you four-wheeling out in the woods?
Out in the woods, the Four Peaks Trail.
Right. Now, when they're in four-wheel drive, if you're in four-wheel drive low, it'll shift 1, 2, 3, 4, and you'll hardly even know it's shifting. So I'm wondering if we got some of that going on.
Yeah, I even tried it in two-wheel drive afterwards. It wouldn't coming back on the highway. I just went back in second gear at like 40 miles an hour all the way back home.
I tell you what, Derek, I got a lot of follow-up questions for you. I'm going to take you off air and get you a better answer and talk through that with you for sure.
Yeah, there's a number of different...
A lot of stuff going on there that was hard to digest really quickly.
Yeah, a lot of information. You got to write down and kind of think that through. It's a tough process. And Joe, I'm going to pick up the phone for you in just a